Cross-sheet and cross-workbook references. This is where Excel really starts to get interesting. It's where you find one of those useful functions that you really have to be careful with. Because as I said at the beginning of this tutorial, if you misuse these cross-sheet and cross-workbook references, you're going to have an awful mess on your hands. And you're going to get into a lot of trouble because you won't know what it is your formulas and your spreadsheet is doing. So always be careful when using these kinds of references. Okay, you can create cell formulas in Excel that point to other worksheets and even other workbooks. Like we saw before, I can create a reference to this value 1, which references cell K5 in the same worksheet. And I'm going to get the value from that cell. If I type equals K5, I get a value of 100. Now that's one way to use links and references to other cells inside the same worksheet. I can also reference cells that are in another worksheet but in the same workbook, in the same Excel file. For example, I have this file data values open currently, and this has two tabs, xref and xref2. Let's go for a second to xref2, and there's a value here, data value 2, which says 200. Okay. To create a reference to this other sheet, what I do is I type the equal to start off the formula. Then I'm going to switch to xref2 like that. Notice how xref is still in white. That means that Excel is expecting input. It's allowing me to switch the worksheet, but it's still expecting input from me with a cell. So what I'm going to do is on this new sheet, I'm going to click B3, which is data value 2. And look at the reference that's being created up here. It says xref2, which is the name of this sheet, exclamation mark, and B3. That's Excel's way of saying it's a reference which goes externally to sheet xref2 and to cell B3. And if I press enter, I get data value 2, which is 200. And if I update this to 250, I automatically get 250 right there. See, it works like a link to any other cell, only that it references a cell on another sheet. And like I said, you can tell that you're referencing a cell on another sheet because the sheet name is going to appear inside the cell reference. Right here, see? This xref2, that's the name of the sheet that contains the cell. Can you type xref2 directly if you want a link to cell B3? Sure you can. Just type equal xref2 exclamation mark B3. And there you go. You have value 250. So you can also type in these references manually. It's no problem. It just gets a little complicated if this, instead of being named xref2, is named external reference or something with a space or a more complicated name. Then it's easier to simply, open the worksheet and click on it. Another way that you can create a reference to another worksheet is like this. You step on the value you want to reference, you copy it, you go back to the original sheet, you select paste, paste special, and you press this little button here which says paste link. That's going to paste a link to that external reference sheet. But if you notice, when I did this, I get a reference which is B3, and if I copy this reference to the right, it doesn't have any $sign, so it's going to move. When I paste a link, the link is automatically fixed right here. Both column and row are locked, so Excel can't change them. That happens when you paste links. You can, of course, remove the locks from it, and it'll behave normally like any other reference. Just know that if you paste a link, you're going to get fixed values. Now, you can also reference cells in other workbooks. For example, right here, I have another spreadsheet, another Excel file, which has a data value 3, and which is called data value external. And I'm going to create a reference to this other file inside Excel. What I do is the same thing. I start off my formula with an equal sign, and then I'm going to switch to my other file. I just switched to using the Windows taskbar like you would any other time. And notice that Excel here has an equal sign, which means it's expecting me to give it a value. So I'm going to click here on cell B3. And I get value 300. And even though this is an external file, it's still linked. So if I update this to 310, my value here updates to 310. I've just created a link to an external file. The format for that link is pretty much the same as the format to another sheet, only that before the sheet name, it contains this name, which is the file name, in square brackets. Now, when you start creating links to external files, it's much easier to simply switch to the other file and click instead of trying to write all of this manually, because it gets really complicated to write this prefix before the cell name. Another thing you can do, of course, is copy this value and paste a link. In fact, down here, this little button is paste link. So right there, we just pasted a link. And notice, of course, that the link has both column and rows blocked. So I can unblock those. And if I move this to the right, my formula is going to update. See? B3, C3. Now pasting data and using the paste link command becomes really useful when you have a lot of cells to link. For example, if I wanted to link this entire table into my other worksheet, well, I would have to do a whole bunch of cells. According to Excel, I would have to link 87 times. And I would have to type in 87 cell references. Now, that's something you don't want to do. So what you do is copy, paste, and paste link. And here's my table, and it's linked to the external file. And of course, from this table, I can create graphs, I can create pivot tables, whatever. And as my data updates in another file, it's going to update right here. For example, if I was on a virtual private network with several stores, I could create a file on a central server where they would type in their monthly sales volume, and then I could link my spreadsheet to that file in order to see each store's monthly updates. And as they update their monthly totals along as the month goes by, well, I'm going to get updates automatically on my worksheet. Now, like I was saying, be very careful when using these workbook references, especially when you're referencing external workbooks, because you might have trouble. Remember that if you lose this file, data value external, your link is going to stop updating. And that means that someday you might open this file, it might fail to link, someone might have deleted your external reference, and you probably won't notice it. You'll keep saying, okay, this is probably updated, especially if it's been updating well for the past 2 weeks. 2 weeks later you come in, it doesn't update, and you don't notice, and you're working with outdated values without even knowing it. That's the danger of using these cross workbook references. If you're using cross references for 3 cells, 4 cells, it might not be so troublesome to keep checking that the connections are active and that everything is fine. But when you're talking 80, 100, 200, 300 cells, then it starts to be a problem. Now, you can check a workbook to see if it has external connections to other workbooks by going to the Data menu. Here in the Data menu, we have this little tab called Connections. And for example, I can press this button which says Refresh All, and all the data is going to be refreshed. Excel is going to update everything. And I can go here to Connections to see where I'm connected. For example, the databases or other sources. In this case, I'm not connected to any databases. I'm connected to files via links. And if I press this button, see, I get my source called Data Value External, and this is the file which I'm linking to. And I can do all sorts of things here. I can update my value if I want. If I move the file to another place, I can press here, change source, and select the place where that file is. I can open the source. For example, if I didn't have this worksheet open right now, I could press open source and it would open that file. And very important, if I don't want to link to this file anymore, I can press this button, break link, and Excel will remove the links to those files, but it's going to keep these numbers inside my worksheet. But before I do that, I want to show you something right here. Let me close this one. Let me close this file, and watch what happens when I open my data values worksheet again. When I open it, I get this warning up here which says automatic update of links has been disabled. Remember a whole bunch of chapters ago I told you about these warnings in Excel when you get them? Well, this is one that you get when you have externally linked files. So by default, Excel, for your security, it disables the updates of the links. Now that's a problem because you have to keep pressing here, enable content, in order to get updated data. If you accidentally close here, instead of pressing enable content, you're going to be working with outdated data. So as you can see, this cross-linking between files isn't really all it's cracked up to be. It tends to be more complicated than it's worth. So what I was talking about, as you can see, here's my external reference to the file. Let's say that I wanted to stop the connection to that file. I go Data, Edit Links, and I'm going to press Break Link. When I break the link, this file is going to disappear, and all these values that came from that file are going to be pasted as values into my worksheet. They're going to turn into regular old numbers, just like if I had imported the data or copied and pasted it, whatever. So break link, I'm going to tell it to break link. See, the source has disappeared, and if I look at my values now, they're regular old numbers. There's no longer any formulas or anything else in there that indicates a reference to an external file. And if I save my spreadsheet right now, the next time I open it, I'm not going to get that warning. So that's how you link between worksheets and between workbooks. Use this feature with caution. If you use it well, you're going to see it's really useful. And you're going to see that if you don't use it well, it can become a real nightmare in your day-to-day work. Thanks for watching this video tutorial. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe to our channel and to visit our website, cubicleoverlords.com, for more instructional videos like this one.